everybody, welcome to Sweetcast. I appreciate you coming to watch a video that is really a sort of an update, and I just want to talk a little bit about the crowdfunding behind the scenes, reveal the curtain here a little bit, because I find that stuff interesting, and I know before I was doing comics, I was really interested to see, and I was hungry for that kind of content, and there never seemed to be enough. So that's what I want to do here. There's a chime. So I don't really look at these very often because they're wildly inaccurate. This is Backer Tracker from BackerKit. You can just go to their website and search any campaign and see some stats. They're not entirely accurate because you actually get accurate stats in the back end of Indiegogo, but it's still data. I mean, it's close. What is not very close, or something that I wish I had a better handle on, was the projection. So if you run a campaign, you've been going for 3 days on a campaign. If you go to BackerKit, you're going to have your hopes so high because it'll tell you that you're going to make probably 2 to 3 times to 4 times maybe what you're actually going to make on that campaign. It's so inflated because the data it has is just your few launch days, and it's not considering that they are launch days. It's considering that that's sort of the trajectory. So I don't know how the algorithm works, but now with a week left, I would be interested to see how accurate this is. Why does it matter? Who cares? Well, it matters because this actually last third of a campaign determines a lot. It's often said that breaking into comics is extremely difficult, but staying in comics is even harder. And I don't think it's any different when you're working independent comics. You are constantly justifying your existence. You're justifying the release of another book. You're justifying, to the world and to yourself in a financial way. Why are you doing this? And so this is actually important because the last third here is essentially, for me, what constitutes the investment in the next book. That's what it comes down to. Not only that, but I don't generally do a very good job of paying myself on campaigns. There's a lot of people to pay, and a lot of my mindset has been around, starting the next thing to make sure that I can stay in comics. But part of the ultimate formula, I think, for success has to include getting paid. And I'm not talking about my getting paid for my writing. If I was to get paid just to write this, if that was my only, task was just to write it, relatively speaking, you could pay me very little, and I would be compensated for writing it. That's the fun part. That is an extremely rewarding part. But in order to make that happen, many writers like myself are in a position that you have to also be the publisher, which is an immense amount of work. You have to be a project manager. You're the one that is now in charge of making sure that nobody's flighty, that nobody drops the ball. And writers, let's be honest, in a broader sense, aren't exactly, they're still artists. They're still in that same realm. So you're forced to be an artist on one hand, but also extremely responsible on the other hand. And those things don't always go together. But if you want to work in comics, suddenly those skills become massively important. And I think it ultimately is a good thing because taking on responsibility helps us grow and just be better, I think, as far as creators go. Anyway, I digress. So the point here is I just wanted to look at this sort of last third of the book and how important it is. And so right now we've got 509 backers. Actually, go to the campaign. 519 backers. See, it's a little lagged behind. It slowed down there again for a little while. Now it's picked back up again. We're getting ridiculously close to 30,000. And with 7 days left, that means we're actually, if I pull up Rise and Fall here, we're actually 1 week ahead of where we were on this campaign, the last Downcast campaign. So as far as funding goes, that's a pretty great place to be. That makes me happy. But if I was able to take profits primarily from this campaign, Downcast 2, and that led into funding Downcast 3 art production ahead of time. Not completely, I didn't quite have enough. Then, Downcast 3 profits in the next third in order to pay for Dracula ahead of time, ideally. It's essentially going to set the budget for the next book. Or at least a starting budget for the next book. But it is important. Anyway, so yeah, I usually end up doing the kind of video after a campaign is finished, and it'll be titled something like "How a Total Nobody Raised $30,000 on a comic book," something like that. Try to make it as clickbaity as I possibly can. At this point, though, I'm in this weird phase because I'm not a total nobody anymore. I'm a relative nobody. Is there a difference? Probably. There's enough of a difference that you're sort of in the territory of, can I justify continuing to do comics? And what I mean by that is, are readers still interested in what it is that I'm doing enough that they're going to continue buying it, reading it? Am I growing as a creator in substantial ways, so that people have confidence that they're kind of investing in a long and promising career in comics, essentially. So when I look at these, having all that in mind, this campaign actually is completely different. Everything behind it has been very different. And I said on the onset that I wanted to try and put most of the weight, or a lot more of the weight of getting this book funded on me as far as marketing efforts go. Clearly, always the backers are the ones lifting the weight and deciding if a campaign is worthy or not of becoming a book. But in this case, I had to sort of shift some of that responsibility, not some of it, essentially all of it, to me, and definitely not depend on crossing streams. However, I've done a lot of crossing streams. I think that's pretty normal to get around and talk about your book, but it hasn't been this desperate search to get on YouTube channels like it had in the past. And what I've sort of learned in this process is that I think that I can do more than I initially thought I could on my own. And it's not a lot. It's not like this is quitting your job kind of money. It's not, especially when you see how much it costs to print 2 books and get everything shipped and all that jazz. I'm not talking about massive profits, but what I'm talking about is the ability to make comics and potentially build a franchise, as being, coming from nothing. So, and I'm not the only one doing this, clearly, so I don't want to, put myself out to be the only one doing this, but I didn't have any major turmoil around my rise as a comic book creator. You'd think of like your boy Zach, and he got an awful lot of attention. One, of course, from his YouTube channel, but the reaction to his YouTube channel. People are remarkably quiet about me, which is, I guess nice. Like, if they talked about me more, that's whatever. But they're remarkably quiet about me, and that's probably because I'm not nearly as interesting or as good of a villain in their eyes as some others are. And so, but the question is, does that matter? And I've seen a lot of people will look at it that you need to be so like an arch nemesis of someone on Twitter in order for you to get enough attention to sell books. But I don't actually think you need that. I think, it certainly doesn't hurt, but I don't think you need it if you're not that type of a person, which I'm not really. So anyway, this is important. I guess just a little bit of an update for you. So right now the book's being lettered. As soon as Eric gets those lettered pages back to me, which I expect to be within the next day or two, honestly, then we're going to do some very intensive editing. I'm going to sit through it. I think first I have a better editing method. I'm going to go through it with my wife first. She's very good at editing. We're going to go through it word by word, line by line, probably 4, 5, 6 times, and then I'm going to send it back to Christina Lynn, who's already edited it once, and she's going to do another final edit on every single word again to make sure that it is the way that it should be. So that's the goal. And yeah, and also I keep ignoring this part. So I'm drawing the backup story in this, the 8-page backup story. And because I'm drawing that, I don't have an awful lot of confidence in my drawing ability, but I am actually having a lot of fun. I have 2 pages left to draw for that. So that's another additional thing. The book is done, but I'm working on my part, I suppose. So these things are all happening at the same time. The point is, I think that this model is going to work. I hope so. And what I'm really interested in is to see how this works long term. Because I think long term you need to be able to make a product and have enough of a body of work that you could show up at a library. You know, your book could sit on a shelf in a library, and a stranger could walk by, look at the book, and think that it is interesting enough to pick up and read, and deliver on that, and have it be interesting enough that that reader could read it, enjoy it, and actually recommend it to a friend, and they don't even know the creators. That would be the ultimate goal. But in order to get there, clearly you have to have a body of work and have enough substance there that you can make it that far, I suppose. Anyway, so there's just a lot of my thoughts on Downcast. There's been a lot of comics news this week. I've talked about a lot of it, but I think what goes unspoken is sort of the boring things, and that is that progress is actually being made on a lot of different fronts in indie comics. I don't think that there's enough recognition from the mainstream industry for how hot independent comics are right now. I think they see what's happening, which is why you see these little experiments from mainstream publishers in crowdfunding, but they aren't actually recognizing what is currently being created in an amazing, astounding level that we've never seen before in comics. So it's pretty fantastic. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. If you haven't backed Downcast, help me back it. What you're doing now in this last third, again, is really important. And this will help essentially determine what budget I can expect for the next book, Dracula. It'll help me set my own projections and, sort of build this moderate, measured pace toward a career in comics. So thanks so much. Appreciate you. And I'll see you in the next video.